Rachel Alexander, of course, is somebody I'd recommend you follow. She published this over on Townhall. This is what she says. It's an opinion piece. She says, the dismissal of Kari Lake's election lawsuit shows that voter disenfranchisement no longer matters. Can't vote, who cares? She writes, the trial court judge in Kari Lake's election lawsuit threw out her case on Saturday and got rid of this trial, calling it a travesty of justice. Judge Thompson had the trial in 2 days. Legal experts say that the opinion resembled other opinions out there. Now, she's making the claim that, maybe Marc Elias was involved in the drafting of the opinion. I would not go that far. I don't think in any way that Marc Elias is, emailing the judge or anything like that. Like, that would be so egregious. But that being said, right, like Marc Elias has been involved in many other election lawsuits around this country, and all of it is posted up for free at democracydocket.com or whatever. And so he's got, in other words, Judge Thompson, if he wanted to write an opinion that mirrored the rest of the country, it's very easy for him to do that. Okay. And I'm not trying to impugn this judge, at all, but this judge, or rather, when judges write opinions, one of the things they do is they look to other opinions, right? And this is just a normal thing. They look to other case law in other parts of the country. So if this judge's opinion is going to mirror, let's say, a case that came out of Pennsylvania or a Georgia case that was also favorable to, and all of these election cases, we've covered so many of them, large portions of them have gone in favor of presuming the legitimacy, it's the presumption of integrity of the election, right? So it doesn't surprise me that it's far off. But what Miss Alexander continues to tell us here, she writes, she says the standard should have been whether voters were disenfranchised, right? That's the standard. Not all the additional hoops that were added, which of course are provided by the law. She makes this point. If inner city blacks had been disenfranchised, Thompson would not have added all those additional requirements. He would have made the law fit. Her opinion. But she does reference this person. She says Robert Guava, or Gouvier, Robert Guavier, somebody weird name, says a rare attorney who isn't afraid to speak up, describes himself as watching prosecutors, judges, and politicians, said the standard should have been whether there was voter suppression, right? And on this point, I do agree with Miss Alexander wholeheartedly. She's, I think, dead right about this. If Stacey Abrams, for example, had her voter block that was disenfranchised or couldn't vote at 47% of centers, right, in Georgia, do you think that this whole thing would have been this way, gone this way? No, it wouldn't have. Instead, the judge said Lake had to show an extremely vague high bar in order to prevail, and that an election official intentionally caused the printer changes, and that many of the disturbing, pieces of evidence were explained away, saying he ignored long lines and other things. And look at this. Even with the higher burden required by Thompson, a well-known lawyer called Viva Frey, whose real name is David Freiheit, said Lake's team showed that there was intentionality and believed the case was a slam dunk. Viva's in the house, man. And Viva's right next door at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. So they go on. Okay, I wanted to share this with you because she's got a different take on this judge. Now, in my opinion, this judge is sort of has his hands tied by what the law says. The law is insane. The law requires all sorts of high levels of proof. But I do agree that the judge, was probably really wanting to make this opinion stay, to make it stick so that it, he doesn't have to reverse the outcome of the election. But what Miss Alexander got for us is just she's done some amazing research on this. She says in 2020, well, we'll leave that one alone. But in Berlin, Germany, she says this year, the court ordered a new election for the same reason that Lake requested one. Long lines due to logistical issues. There was no requirement of intent or showing that problems affected the outcome, right? Long lines is that type of suppression. Chaotic scenes, embarrassing irregularities at Berlin's ballot stations during last month's general election have shaken confidence in Germany's election system. Final election results will be published. Berlin held elections. There was a referendum. Ballot papers were delivered to the wrong districts. Trouble had been predictable. It's a total mess. Confidence in the system has been shattered. And so there are, issues like this all over the place. And Miss Alexander wrote an excellent piece for us there. And here's what she said. A friend described the situation for her. She says, "We don't have a justice system and voting is becoming pointless. Only Democrat votes matter in our country now. Democrats can just elect themselves now. You can just have a Secretary of State called Katie Hobbs, who just becomes a Secretary of State. And then you don't even need voters. Don't even need polling places on election day, because who cares if people vote or not? Voter fraud experts believe the Democrats started targeting states years ago. States like Washington, California, then moved to Colorado. Arizona, Georgia, and Pennsylvania are their latest targets. They intend to move on to states like Florida next, if not stopped. Voter disenfranchisement has become one of the most important issues facing Republicans today, and if not stopped, we will become a one-party nation." This is over from Rachel Alexander. This is an excellent piece. I'd really encourage you to go follow her and support her work. She's also on Twitter at Rach_IC. She wrote a great piece, and I think she's dead right. And her friend that she was talking to has hit the nail on the head. People like Marc Elias are extremely excited about all of their election litigation success. This is Marc Elias. He is the founder of Democracy Docket. He's the partner at Elias Law Group, presumably somebody who, according to the motion for sanctions, approves the bills. He founded Democracy Docket, which is another, it's a left-wing progressive media platform, they call it, opinion analysis about voting rights, election, and democracy. His law group is focused on, as far as I can tell, he represents a lot of election litigation lawsuits, kind of like the one we just covered. So he's here. He is in absolute love with his dog. He's one of the people on Twitter with profile pictures of their dogs. Okay. Not themselves for whatever reason. Okay. And banner, the dog looks great. I'm sure the dog's awesome. Bodie sounds like his name. I'm sure he's great. But here's what he said. Starting next week, we're bringing back favorites. He says that all he does is sort of fight Republicans. And he was extremely excited about the victory when Kari Lake lost. Here's what he wrote. If you have some time today, you got to listen to our summation of what we've accomplished in 2022. He says, a must-read year-end review of voting rights litigation in 2022 by Ellis Champion, over from the Democracy Docket, which is the Marc Elias organization. And look at these details they have for us. This is what the Democrats are doing. Republicans have no answer as far as I can tell. They write, a lot has happened since we last looked at voting rights. Now that we're at the close of the year, we want to give you a review on all the things that our Democratic lawfare lawyers are doing. It was no easy feat. We can't touch upon every decision that impacted voters. There were some notable trends. 1, Republicans, in their attempts to curb mail-in voting, they had some success, but they failed on multiple fronts. They say throughout 2022, GOP-affiliated groups filed a deluge of anti-voting lawsuits, many of which attacked mail-in voting. 2 biggest impacts from the GOP's attacks came in 2 swing states. In Wisconsin, a conservative group prevailed in banning drop boxes across the state. And in Pennsylvania, litigation over mail-in voting reached new levels. After multiple rounds, the GOP succeeded in its quest to ban the counting of undated and wrongly dated mail-in ballots, right? Marc Elias and Democracy Docket, they were wanting that stuff to stay. Undated, wrongly dated, doesn't matter. It should stay in here. They say, though, although the Republicans also succeeded in blocking a new no-excuse mail-in voting law in Delaware, otherwise, they were largely unsuccessful at chipping away at this popular method of voting. Other conservative lawsuits attacked various aspects of mail-in voting, and they all came up short. And look what state is right at the top of that list: Arizona, Massachusetts, New York, and North Carolina. Republicans didn't pull off all their attempts to restrict mail-in voting, but their strategy attacking this method as a tool did have a clear consequence. Polling shows that they lost a lot of elections. But now Republicans might shift their tone to vote by mail because they know that they have to win elections. We'll see if that changes. Republicans backed voter suppression laws and practices. They met their fate in court. In Pennsylvania, Republicans wanted to throw out one of their own laws, and they lost. In New York, GOP election officials tried to ignore state laws, and each time the court put an end to their subversion. In Arizona, they say the most harmful provisions of 2 GOP-backed voter suppression laws. Listen to what they say. Voter suppression laws. It was ensuring that voters' registrations weren't needlessly canceled. You know, this is just... They'll talk about GOP integrity laws as voter suppression laws. And voter suppression is basically everything. We covered this one a long time ago. This was a list put out by the Voting Rights Alliance. 61 forms of voter suppression. Okay, basically everything is voter suppression. If Republicans want photo ID laws, guess what? Voter suppression. IDs. If you get rid of early voting, voter suppression. Robocalls, flyers, voter suppression. Police officers at polling places, voter suppression. If you relocate polling places, voter suppression. All of these things, right? Proof of citizenship, voter suppression. Failure to pre-register 17-year-olds. Okay, if you don't just automatically register the youth to vote, voter suppression. All of these things. Okay, look at this. Long lines right there. It's on the list as voter suppression from the Voting Rights Alliance. But the Maricopa County Supreme Court's like, well, whatever. Who cares? If any one of these things, okay, if you have, police at certain polling places in certain locations in the United States, people will freak out about that. They'll call it voter suppression. Proof of citizenship, voter suppression. But long lines, evidently nobody cares about. So Marc Elias, their team, they're fighting against voter suppression laws. Voter suppression laws, according to them, in my opinion, are probably only the things that result in less Democratic votes. They're also in Georgia. They got a number of voter suppression laws through the court system. They say in Arkansas, a judge struck down voter suppression laws that attacked every aspect of the voting process. A federal district court judge also struck down laws in Florida. Over the course of 2022, Democracy Docket says 4 voter suppression laws in 2021 were also permanently blocked, a resounding victory for Native American voters. They've got felony disenfranchisement laws that are coming back. They've got cases out of Mississippi, North Carolina. They're in litigation in Tennessee. Courts delivered wins for individuals all over the place. Arkansas, Indiana, North Carolina, Texas, Wisconsin. Some stuff is paused on appeal. What's coming up next? They say we'll keep track of all of our important litigation on our cases page. And look at all these cases. Lake versus Hobbs, they had that one going. They're here in Arizona on the Attorney General case. Mississippi, they're focusing on redistricting and legislation there. In Arkansas, challenging voting machines. New York, challenging counting and runoffs. All of these, lawsuit after lawsuit. You've got 56 pages of these. Okay, just click next until your little heart explodes. That's what the Democratic lawyers are doing all across this country. It's all beautifully organized. And if you actually click one of these things, it's amazing. It's really good. They've got courtroom updates, motion to dismiss. They have summaries of all. They probably got law student interns, just working their little butts off all day. The Republicans are just losing elections and losing litigation. Meanwhile, this guy's earning $600,000 fees for 2-day trials. Not bad. All right. Or 500, whatever the fees were. Big fat fees. $500,000 fees for very short trials, but he wins, so he can charge whatever he wants. He keeps succeeding, and the Democrats are victorious. Now, Kari Lake, of course, will appeal, and we will, of course, continue to cover it. I hope you join us as we do. Thank you for liking this video and subscribing wherever it is you're watching it. We will look forward to seeing you on the next one.